Hello, my name is Jeff Woodland, and I want to welcome you to the 5-9 session on Don't Leave Your Community on Hold, how to make COVID-19 vaccine communication smarter, faster, and easier with AI, intelligent routing, mass SMS, and more. Like I said, I'm Jeff Woodland. I'm the Vertical Marketing Director at 5-9, and with me is John DeBaca, an AI sales specialist who's with 5-9, but was also with Inference. So let's get started. So, in this session on Don't Leave Your Community on Hold, one of the things that struck me was this interesting editorial cartoon that I caught last month. And I thought it captured common fears about getting COVID vaccines. And one of the things that, when you look at this kind of, reminds me of Candyland, like this one path and how hard it is to move forward without sliding back. Like, for example, no computer, lose 3 turns, or unfortunately, like if you live in a rural area, lose 4 turns, or, fast forward where they have vaccines available, but can you get there in time because you weren't notified? There are a lot of challenges in vaccine communication, and we're here to talk about them. Now, in this session, we're going to talk about the challenges. We're going to also talk about the business impact, and then we're going to take a look at what the solution can do and what you should be looking for. We're going to be doing a demonstration of an intelligent virtual agent, as well as discussing a solution checklist that you should use in order to look at how you can make vaccine communication easier, faster, and smarter. So, and then finally, we're going to end with how to get more info. So let's talk about the challenges. Now, on a personal level, I recently took my son and we went to get tested for COVID-19, and fortunately, good news, we were both negative. And anyone else who's on this call, if you are having issues with COVID, my heart goes out to you. It's certainly been quite the pandemic. So when I was in this waiting room with my son, I was looking around, and what struck me was just how busy it was, and how it was like the nurses, the doctors, everyone was constantly moving. And I talked to some of the people at 5-9. I said, what are you hearing? And the stories were just amazing of nurses working, long shifts, 10-hour shifts, and then sitting down and having to make phone calls manually to remind people to come get their vaccine. And so I'm like, okay, let's think about these challenges. And there's like 3 major ones, and then there's the 4th one, which I think a lot of people don't consider. And when you have the challenges, you have starting with your inbound web page or your inbound phone banks, where it's people coming in and asking a lot of the same questions, or there's a lot of time spent scheduling appointments and sending reminders, or doing broadcasting updates or updating the database. That's the 4th thing, because you can have these solutions, but boy, you got to have system integration if you really want to get those efficiency gains. And speaking of gains, like, yes, everyone wants to speak on voice. It's the most dominant channel, but a lot of people prefer to use SMS or email or WhatsApp. So bringing that in and integrating that for automation makes a lot of sense. You also need to be ready to speak English and non-English languages, because many people who in your community may not have English as their primary language. And of course, finally, HIPAA and other federal regulations and state regulations that must be met. So these are the challenges at a micro level. I'd like to turn it over to John DeBaca to talk about kind of the business impact of these. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity today to share with you what I'm seeing out there in the marketplace. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what's happening, primarily with the healthcare systems, but as news gets out that counties and municipalities are also doing COVID vaccinations and testing, they're also experiencing the same situation. And the challenge that they're having at first, and probably still ongoing, is overload on telecommunications. They're getting 10 times to 100 times the normal call volume, and it's overloading their capacity to do normal business, right? And in some cases, they're just not ready to even answer all of the COVID questions that are coming their way. When can I get vaccinated? How do I register? Am I eligible? These are all the types of questions that they're receiving, and they're scrambling. because it's not like they had a lot of COVID experts just laying around waiting to take this call. They're having to shift people from their day jobs to be able to man these hotlines, and it's not the best and highest use of certain resources. I think Jeff mentioned nurses having to pick up the hotline. If you think about really a waste of a resource, it's putting a nurse who's a medically trained person on a hotline to answer questions like, "Am I eligible?" That's better solved with other solutions. Another impact that we're seeing out there, and this was shared with me from a customer opportunity, where they have a hotline, and the hotline wasn't for COVID; it was for poison control. And so every day they get 3 to 6 calls. And for a 2-day period that we talked to them, they were not able to receive any calls on that line. So you think about that impact, right? I'm calling poison control. I'm one of maybe 6 other people that day that are trying to call because I've got an emergency situation. And I'm not able to get through because I've got lots of people trying to ask or answer questions around COVID. That's a challenge. For those 2 days that we spoke to them, that's potentially 12 people who had a medical emergency related to non-COVID related health issues. In this case, it was poison. Were not able to get through. So it's a serious consideration when you're talking to these agencies, you're talking to healthcare systems, because COVID could overwhelm what they're trying to do, and not only jeopardize their daily mission, but also jeopardize their ability to be responsive to the market and responsive to their customers around COVID. So majority of agencies, they're scrambling, right? We've already touched upon that for all the reasons I highlighted. It's capacity, it's systems in place, it's the ability, it's the personnel in place. Those are all the reasons why they're scrambling. I want to call out some business rules that we'll touch upon in a little bit, but knowing how to administer a system, what are the rules from the CDC, what are the rules from FEMA, what are your state or local rules associated with administering the vaccine. It could vary, so it's important to dig down and understand how our solution impacts those business rules. And then the last one that I want to call out is something that is becoming more important because it shows up on the nightly news, and that is dosage availability and dosage management. If you think about sort of the real world case where most people, when they call and they get an appointment, if they don't like the date, maybe it's too far out, they call another agency, right? So you could be on the county list, you could be on a healthcare systems list, and you could be on a city list, and you're going to just take the first appointment you get to, that actually gets to you. When you get your vaccination, how many times do you think those people call back? Let's say if they're on the county, they call the city or healthcare system and say, "Hey, give my dose to someone else." The answer is almost never. So what systems can we put in place to make sure that everyone is getting the dose, that the dosage, usage, and distribution is maximized and optimized to make sure that everyone gets gets vaccinated? And if you think about, why that's important, for those of you who are not aware, Moderna and Pfizer have a 12-hour shelf life, which means once you take them out of the refrigerator, it's use it or lose it within 12 hours. And so at the end of the day, if you had 500 no-shows, that could be a real challenge. And many of us have seen those stories on the news where they did not manage it appropriately. And so these organizations are scrambling just to make sure that those dosages were administered and that they didn't have to throw them away at the end of the day. So I want to talk about a real world example here. This was on the testing side. And the nice thing about our solution is that you can tailor it for testing, vaccinations, or both. This organization is COVID Clinic. They're a little bit unique in the sense that they built their business around doing COVID testing. They have, brick and mortar sites as well as mobile sites throughout multiple states. Currently, there's 65 testing centers, and they're rolling out new mobile sites, which is essentially an RV type environment where they go out there and they'll be able to do testing and really reach parts of the community that were not able to be reached normally. They have 130 agents across multiple sites because they're leveraging our solution. Those agents can be in the cloud, they can work from home, and the organization still has visibility into the type of work they're doing and making sure that they get the reach, the training, and the oversight that's required when dealing with COVID. 10,000 calls a day, that's a big number, right? When you look at that number for just this single institution and you look across counties and you look across cities and other healthcare systems, the volume is fairly significant in that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of calls throughout the entire United States. So one thing that you need to think about, and this is where we really come to play, is that if we're just doing this with live agents, it's difficult to find the people because it takes time to recruit, it takes time to train, especially since you're dealing with HIPAA type information. That's specific training, I'm sorry. It could be 2 to 4 hours per person, depending on the level of what they call PHI information. That's protected health information that you're capturing. And that's dependent upon the survey questions you ask. That comes full circle to those business rules that I was talking about. So if you think about, what's the advantage to a COVID clinic to have the mix between an AI-based solution where you're using an intelligent virtual agent and a live agent, it's huge, it's critical. It allows them to be more responsive, allows them to be agile in terms of their ability to react and respond to the business. And it's this level of reactiveness, responsiveness, and agility that we're going to show you here in the next couple of slides and through our demo, how to respond to vaccinations, how to respond to testing and manage the overall COVID pandemic. So what I like to do here is double click and go deeper into the applications and the solutions that we put together, right? It's how to make them smarter, how to make sure that we're leveraging all the tools that are in our toolbox. It's not just AI-based intelligent virtual agents. It's not just MMS and SMS. It's live agents, and it's adhering to FEMA, CDC, state and local regulatory regulations. All this needs to be incorporated into the solution. And so when we look at the solution, there's 4 key elements that need to be incorporated, in my opinion, to really be an effective solution. The 4 elements are vaccination and testing scheduling, right? How do you actually get somebody in for a test or get somebody in to get vaccinated, not only for their first dosage, but their second dosage? And if there's a booster required later, how do you do that follow-up? What are those frequently asked questions? We gave the example earlier of, thinking about best and highest use for a nurse. Answering the eligibility question again and again is probably not best and highest use. Is there a way that we can offload that work to an intelligent virtual agent because it's repetitive? Can it be automated? Can it be distributed in a way that really frees up that nurse or that contact center agent to do more important work, to deal with the escalations, to deal with the real medical questions as opposed to, am I 65 or older? Does it cost money? Is it safe? And where do I go? Those are all questions that are better handled by an intelligent virtual agent. Service locations and hours. If you're a healthcare system, you've got a facility. But if you think about it, I don't know if I want 500 cars in a long line trying to get into a single hospital, because that's a challenge, because guess what can't get into the hospital if you're clogging up all the lanes? Ambulances. So it's that non-COVID medical emergencies that are impacted when you don't manage the distribution of vaccines appropriately. So what are they doing? A lot of organizations, and in particular counties and cities, are looking to stadiums and alternative facilities where they can set up essentially a COVID-specific response, where they have lines of cars or lines of people, and you're in line, you get a shot, you go off to the side for 15 minutes. If you don't have a reaction, you drive away. But how do I get there? How do I notify the patient that don't go to the hospital, don't go to the courthouse, go to this particular stadium or a particular event site where you can go and get vaccinated? That's critical. You want to make sure that it is as seamless as possible to make sure you can get the throughput that you need to make sure everyone gets vaccinated. Confirmation follow-up, this is where we particularly shine, because it's one thing to get on a schedule. It's another thing to make sure that you show up. So remember the example I gave earlier where we have people who are on multiple lists, and they don't tend to call the other facilities and free up their vaccine for someone else. Think about the use case where if I call somebody 2 or 3 days before their scheduled vaccination and I ask them to confirm their appointment, or I give them the option to cancel their appointment, or give them the option to reschedule their appointment, that's critical. So that confirmation really allows you to manage your doses. So you're not in that situation at the end of the day where you may have to throw away dosages, or you may have to scramble to find people to get a vaccine that may have not been on the original call list or the original eligibility list. These are all real world examples, and we can help by providing that confirmation. The follow-up piece is also becoming critical because you've heard about some side effects on certain types of dosages. At first, a lot of agencies, when they rolled out, were not concerned about that, but they're starting to become concerned. They want to track to see, are certain types of reactions more prevalent in certain communities? Is it by age, by race, by ethnicity, or is it even by locality, right? These are things that the CDC is now more interested in. So you'll start to see, depending on where you live, more requests for not only that confirmation element to make sure you're managing the dose on the front end, but that follow up to see, what were your reactions? How was the process? Was it easily understood? Did you receive information that satisfied the following requirements? These are all things that you can do. So if you think about, kind of total solution before I hand off to Lad to do a quick demo, these are the elements that we consider to be critical to delivering an overall comprehensive solution. They incorporate artificial intelligence through intelligent virtual agent. They leverage a back-end contact center agent, which we're not going to demo today, but if you think about escalation to a live person, that live person could be a medical professional, or they could be somebody specifically trained to handle these questions. In many cases, we hope that it's not somebody who can be better used in another environment other than just answering eligibility. That's something that an AI chatbot can do, or a intelligent virtual agent. So let me go ahead and I'm going to hand off to Lad. We're going to run through a demo. What we've done in this demo specifically is just capture some basic, what we call PII information, their name, right, their phone number, which we're going to mock up here for your use, and their date of birth. And we can use that information to make decisions about eligibility. We then mock a scheduling app and then a location service where we can then SMS or MMS him the location. What you notice in here is that we're not including PHI type information, but that's easily added through a questionnaire. We would ask the caller certain questions. They could respond or provide a yes or no response, or depending on the state and locality, it also could be consent. So let me go ahead and kick this off. And with that, Lad, let me turn this over to you. Actually, hold on just a second. I think Lad is having some network difficulty.
Thank you, John. So today I'm going to dial in as if I were somebody trying to get a vaccination. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the demo here.
Thank you for calling the COVID Scheduling Center. This hotline can assist you with several things, like scheduling a vaccination appointment, information about eligibility, locations, or other information regarding COVID vaccinations. Just tell me in a few words how I can help.
Yeah, I want to schedule an appointment.
Are you calling for an appointment for testing, vaccination, or something else?
Vaccination.
We show that you called in on 1937. Is that the phone number you wish us to use?
Yes.
In order to schedule an appointment, we need to gather some information. What is your first and last name?
Lad Wimmer.
What is your date of birth?
December 19th, 1974.
I heard your birthday as the 19th of December 1974. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you calling for initial vaccination or to schedule a booster shot?
Initial.
Our next available appointment is February 10th, 2021 at 10 a.m. at Canyon View Family Medicine, Santa Quin. They are located at 94 West Main Street, Santa Quin, Utah, 84655. Does the appointment time work for you?
Yes.
Great, your appointment is set for February 10th, 2021 at 10 a.m. at Canyon View Family Medicine, Santa Quin. You will receive a SMS notification confirming your appointment. Is there anything else I might help you with?
Yes.
Please hold while your call is being transferred to an administrator.
Okay, so we made it through and we got an appointment for getting scheduled for COVID vaccination. So what I'm going to do now is we're actually going to do and check on who's eligible to do vaccination.
Thank you for calling the COVID Scheduling Center. This hotline can assist you with several things like scheduling a vaccination appointment, information about eligibility, locations, or other information regarding COVID vaccinations. Just tell me in a few words how I can help.
Who is eligible for vaccination?
We are currently accepting registrations for persons 65 and older. Is there anything else I might help you with?
No.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lad, and glad we were able to work out some of those network challenges. So I guess what I want to make sure that everybody heard what we did in that demonstration. We put together a solution that was able to do the scheduling as automating. We're using an intelligent virtual agent. We could, for those calls that we could not manage, we could pass that on to a live agent. We actually were able to do frequently asked questions. We demoed how it was eligibility, but it could as easily have been safety questions, cost questions, location questions, side effects, anything like that, right? That's something that is easily incorporated into this type of environment. And then we had a location services where we not only captured their information, we identified it to a particular medical facility, and then we were able to follow up with a SMS so that they had directions on their phone. We could easily incorporate other things that are being used today. Some states are asking for tokens to actually give you permission to register. Other things like magic links, QR codes, so that if you show up and you get a QR code on your phone or your email, you just show it to the screener when you're in line. They pull up your information, they capture it. You can modify things like different types of contact information and preferences. When you think about sort of what Jeff touched on in the very beginning, right? And I want to take you back a few minutes to, do you have a computer? Lose 3 turns, right? That was on that little maze that we went in the cartoon. Do you live in a rural area, right? Lose 4 turns. Right? These are real situations today because unless you live in a big city, we sort of take internet access for granted. In many cases, some of the applets that they're using vis-a-vis the web to schedule appointments don't lend themselves to iPhones and Android, right? They're better built for computers. And if you don't have a computer or you don't live in a rural area, that's a challenge. And when you look at the mission for FEMA and the CDC and our state and local governments, their responsibility is to vaccinate everyone. And so how do we do it? Well, voice is a great option, right? This is a way for us to add this capability to efforts that are already underway. And if you have customers or opportunities that are already in flight, come and visit them with this solution, because what we're discovering is that the initially launched solutions were really intended to get something out the door. And as they learn more about the deployment and administration of these vaccines, they're looking and recognizing that they need to add this type of capability. So let's talk a little bit about what's a critical list of things to think about on a checklist.
Okay, great. And yeah, so this slide is vaccine communication solution checklist. And John, thank you so much for that demonstration of AI-powered self-service for the intelligent virtual agent. I wish we had more time where we could do a demonstration of our contact center capabilities, or talk longer about secure and reliable administration. But we don't have that time. So how about we just can you talk through some of the key points in the checklist for AI powered self-service?
Absolutely. So basically, we talked about the best and highest use for the human agents out there, those resources like a nurse. If you can offload to a AI powered self-service intelligent virtual agent, you should, right? It really streamlines the process. It takes a lot of that mundane work off their plates, and again, allows for those expensive, valuable resources to really maximize their contribution. If you want to implement multiple languages, that's really key, right? If you want to be proactive in terms of managing those dosages by being sure that you've got a wait list or that you're able to confirm appointments so you don't wind up at the end of the day with a lot of vaccine dosages that you can't use. make sure that you're maximizing it because it just helps us all. If you think about secure and reliable administration, right, you want to make sure your solution is HIPAA compliant. We are. It's critical because you're dealing in some cases with what they call PII, personal identification information, in some cases PHI, that's personal healthcare information that is HIPAA governed. In many cases, FEMA and the CDC have guidelines specifically around COVID solutions. They're reimbursing different organizations and county governments for implementing these solutions. But those reimbursement comes with the rules, right? One in particular is you got to report. So if you've been watching the news, you'll hear stories like, oh, by this time, by April, we expect to have a certain percentage of the population of a certain geography vaccinated. Well, where's that information coming from? Well, it's coming from the frontline, organizations, the counties, the cities, the healthcare organizations that are doing the vaccinations. They take that information on a daily basis. They roll it up into FEMA and CDC, and now the organization, the federal government, has some visibility as to the efficacy of the solution. So if you want to get reimbursed, make sure you've got reporting and make sure that it's a total solution. A lot of these solutions that were stood up initially don't have those elements. And as a result, they're coming back to revisit how to harden and add that capability. Let me turn this over to you if you want to talk about the contractor capabilities, Jeff.
John, I did have a question about AI-powered self-service. Can you use something like an intelligent virtual agent to make outbound phone calls to people to alert, to have essentially prompt an AI-powered self-service conversation, but do it on the outbound side?
Oh, absolutely. So on that confirmation and follow-up element that's critical in our solution, that's exactly what's happening. You have the call initiated by a intelligent virtual agent. If it's doing confirmation, it's going to ask 1 to 3 questions. Do you want to confirm your appointment? Do you want to cancel your appointment? Or do you want to reschedule? Right. If it's doing an outbound notification to look for, reactions, right? Did you have a fever? Did you have body aches? What were the results of taking Pfizer versus Moderna? Right. That's critical. It also has some follow up to say, how did we do? Right. Did you have to wait long? I mean, your scheduled appointment was for 4 o'clock. Were you serviced at 4 o'clock, or did you have to wait until 5 o'clock? Was the staff friendly? All of those things are all outbound and can be automated. In many cases, they should be automated because it really allows the user to be honest with their answers. So they're not feeling like they're being interrogated. They can say yes or no. They can provide feedback. We can transcribe it to provide visibility, not only for the upside confirmation of appointments, but the backside of it, where you're just following up to make sure that people are okay. And is there any way that you can improve the process?
Okay, thanks, John. So one thing, while we look at this checklist, I did want to walk through the center column called contact center capabilities. Like in my opinion, it's absolutely imperative if you're having a high volume of phone calls coming in that you really look into an AI solution. Now, a percentage of those phone calls do need to be escalated to the best possible person. And that's really where you want to have an omni-channel contact center that can route conversations that are coming inbound and be able to do it across, yes, absolutely voice, but the other channels like video, messaging, and email. And so having that omni-channel capability allows you to have multiple channels coming into your contact center that really works for the demographics that it could exist in your community. Also, strongly consider looking at mass outbound SMS, sometimes called MMS, where you have to send out a single message, but do it in volumes of 10,000, 100,000, perhaps even higher. And that's something that really is, I'd say that's pretty key, looking at how you want to communicate during the pandemic. Another key part is being remote ready. And that's the ability to permit your staff to work from home and making sure that they don't have to take home a bunch of equipment to do it. For example, that they only need an internet connection and a laptop. And then they can start taking calls or emails or whatever the channel is, and be able to do it from home. Now, if you're going to be remote ready, you're also going to want to have what I'm going to call it real-time monitoring, which gives you real-time control. So you know what your staff is doing. And if they need help, such as you could monitor, if this is your type of operation, you could listen into the call, you could provide coaching to that remote person. You could see, are they logged in? And of course, have the historical reports that you can customize to also look at how things have been trending over time. Now, as a part of this, quality management, that's a great solution when you have a dispersed workforce who are working from home, so that all the calls are recorded. And then you can start using like speech analytics to start looking at particular calls that may be out of compliance. And then lastly, if you have enough people being employed, at some point you got to get rid of this, the spreadsheets and the paper, and move to a modern system for scheduling and forecasting call activity and properly scheduling your people. John, can you think of anything else that we might have missed on this checklist? It's pretty comprehensive.
No, what I would do is remind everyone that in order to really solve for COVID testing and vaccination, approach it as a business challenge. Understand that you need all of these different elements working in conjunction.
Yeah.
A vendor that really can put it all together for you. Because at the end of the day, it helps us all if we get people vaccinated. And for those organizations that are having to report, right, we need to be part of the solution.
Yeah. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for attending. If you want to learn more here at Enterprise Connect, come to our virtual booth. We have 5-9 experts there. You can meet the presenters, myself and John DeBaca. You can also schedule a private demonstration, which I highly recommend. I think they're the best way to really learn about a solution. We also have the ability, you can play a video that we brought together called 5-9 Knows Crisis Management. I think it does a really good use case of how to manage conversations during a crisis. You can also pick up a solution brief called 5-9 Helps COVID-19 Vaccine Communication. And here are the latest dad jokes. I have a ton of them. I whip them out whenever I can to torture my children. That brings us to the end. John, any last thoughts before we close out?
I am good. Thank you all very much for attending, and looking forward to seeing you at Enterprise Connect.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.